Welcome to another episode of Distory. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and this evening we are actually going to venture onto the 1955 version of Disneyland's Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Now, this attraction is very different from its current form, so we are going to go through scene by scene, which there's not a lot of photo evidence, but we do know what actually occurred in each scene, so we're going to describe them and show a couple of visuals. And tonight, to discuss the early edition, the C ticket or D ticket version of this attraction, is with me, as always, my wonderful co-host, Kate, the Disney Cicerone. How are we doing this evening, Kate?
I'm doing really great. I think that this series has been so what?
Dude, that was like the most believable. I'm doing good.
I'm doing great. It's fine. It's like that meme with the dog with
the fire.
Flames.
There's just nothing but flames behind us.
That's pretty much how the week's going. But honestly, this series has been really, really fun so far to dig into. And so I was actually really sad that we had to stop last week after we talked about concept.
Right.
We talked about the earliest versions where he didn't end up in the hot place. He ended up with the pearly gates in heaven. And all of the ways that Claude Coates jumped in and the painting and all of that stuff. So I was sad to have to pause it, but I think this is going to be a really amazing episode digging into this history.
You have to lay out the ground foundations of where does the original piece come from, and then what is the concept / construction, which we got through, and now we're ready to finally ride the wild ride.
Yeah, and it is different than the one we have today. So like we always do, we should probably start on the outside of the attraction.
Oh my gosh.
Which in 1955, you have to remember in Fantasyland, we had all these medieval circus tent look, right, Kirk?
Yeah. I mean, this thing looked like, honestly, when you look at a picture, it looks like a medieval jousting tent, like where you would sit in the stands watching some sort of medieval carnival type ravelry, or maybe some knights fighting one another. But yeah, it certainly has that look and appeal to it.
And we talked about this on a previous Fantasyland series, but a lot of people will assume that Walt Disney wanted Fantasyland to look more like it does now, with that kind of like that village feel. But that's not true. That was kind of like a rumor that was started by somebody, and Tony Baxter debunked it. He said that's kind of like something we talked about, that Walt would have wanted this just to kind of sell the project, the fact that they were changing it so much. But really, this was what Walt Disney wanted. It was like the inside of the castle, area where they are having like a celebration. And so they have all the jousting tents and whatnot. And so this really was what Walt Disney wanted. It wasn't because they didn't have enough money to make some other version.
All right. One glaring thing that we're not talking about is that all these medieval tents make perfect sense because you have entered underneath a giant castle. Giant is, I guess, relative when you think about Walt Disney World, but neither here nor there.
It was the only one that existed at that time.
Right. You got to remember, we're doing hub and spoke, which was very revolutionary. You go through the weenie, which would be the castle. You go through those drawbridge and gates, and then you end up in this medieval Fantasyland fair. And it's a perfect backdrop because you're still not missing the castle. The castle has all of its adorned bricks right there as its focal centerpiece. You're just on the backside of water now.
Right, exactly. And I love some of these vintage photos because you get to see the people in them, not just the thing. Like, look at this guy with this old stroller.
First of all, that looks like a play school stroller. It is maybe a height of 1.5 feet high at tops. Or that guy is a giant. Is that Andre the Giant?
I don't think so, because look at the woman next to him.
She's very petite as well. I loved also that the amount of high heels that you would see in 1955 and very nice dresses. And of course, lots of suits. Very different than the croc-laden, poncho-adorned attire that you see now in the parks. Although you guys are umbrella team. Sorry, I forgot. Disneyland's team umbrella. Walt Disney World is team poncho. Never mind.
That's right.
If you wear a poncho in
Get
Disneyland,
it right, Kirk.
Kate told me, if you wear your poncho in Disneyland, they're going to look at you weird. Which
they're
is true.
going to know that you're a Disney World.
Yeah, they're going to know that's right.
Yeah. It's either like raincoat or umbrella. There's no poncho. I mean, unless you're from Disney World regular.
Yep.
Okay, so they had all these medieval circus tent look, which we've talked about before. The other thing they had back in the day was ticket books. So this one, it started off with being a little bit cheaper, was a C ticket when Disneyland opened in 1955.
Giving them away.
Given away, yeah. So they look like this.
Yeah, it's I like to always like when you look at these tickets, the best way to understand the way that Disney was thinking about popularity wise is the more expensive, the better the attraction. But it's always fun to look at. Do you want to read some of the attractions that you have on that C ticket from 1955?
Yeah, so this is everything that was basically 25 cents in the park in 1955. So in Frontierland, they have the Mule Pack, that's what it says. The Stagecoach, Mark Twain Riverboat. In Main Street, there was Passenger Train, is how they called the railroad. In Tomorrowland, Autopia Car and the TWA Moon Rocket. And then in Adventureland, there was the Jungle Riverboat, which is actually 35 cents. So I lied. So these ones, the TWA Moon Rocket and the Jungle River Cruise Jungle River Boat was 35 cents. And then in Fantasyland, we have Peter Pan, Mr. Toad, Snow White, all 25 cents. It's that was all for a C ticket. And I was just thinking about, I have this this is from my mother from 1956 that she visited Disneyland. This was her little paper fan. And you can see that's actually kind of what they called all those things on here as well, which I hadn't really thought about because this one says Tropical River Ride instead of Jungle River Ride.
Yeah, for the Jungle Cruise. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sky Buckets.
Yeah,
wait, what does it say for the Sky Bucket one?
It's a Skyway Ride.
Skyway Ride. The Skyway Ride.
Yeah.
Clock of the World. They really reaching for straws on attractions there.
They did change this though to be a D ticket ride later on when they added some more attractions. Looks like this. And these ones were then 35 cents. So they raised the price of them at that point. And so this one says Tomorrowland had Skyway to Fantasyland. In Fantasyland, there was Peter Pan, Snow White, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Storybook Land Canal Boats, Alice in Wonderland, and Skyway to Tomorrowland. And in Frontierland, they had the Mark Twain Steamboat. You could see that the language is starting to get a little bit more firm at this point, rather than when it was a C ticket. Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland, baby. That's where all my money's going.
That being said, do you have anything else on the outside before we start heading into this?
No.
one?
Let's go. The only thing, because we're starting to now see the wall with the mural art. We filled our waiting time drinking in the wonderful, this is an account, drinking in the wonderful wall-to-wall painted version of Toad in his motor car. He is everywhere along the wall, his antique car careening at dangerous angles as he plummets from Toad Hall into the countryside, from the railroad tracks into the flaming recesses of Hades, the various tiny toads grinning as they cling to their steering wheels, their long, pointy feet flailing in the air.
Pointy feet.
I can't trust a toad who doesn't have pointy feet. Just me.
I do love that it's just kind of like Toad just driving all around the place. And remember, we've mentioned this before that, these murals worked as kind of a preview of the attraction, just like you have a preview of the films, to entice you to see it. And you have to think, too, that at this point, Disney still was trying to entice people to go on the rides, because you don't have to do that now because people aren't buying individual tickets for the rides. But they have to do something to essentially sell the ride about what's inside. And this helped serve that purpose, as well as remind people of the original story of the movie.
Yeah, like remember, especially for dark rides, they're relatively innovative in 1955 in telling like a thematic storyline, right? Because up until this point, they were tunnels of love, or like those like old school boat rides mainly is what led us to the eventual creation of the traditional dark ride. But this was still like such an innovative point. I also think the way that they viewed Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and if you look at the way Mr. Toad is like hanging from the steering wheel, again, is to make you feel as if this is a thrill attraction, because that 4-foot turning radius, it could whip you around the corners, and then all those bumping doors is going to add to like a level of thrill, more so than any of the other dark rides here. Because like even though Peter Pan is elevated, it's still very smooth. Same with Snow White, although terrifying. This one is more of what you would deem like a mid-thrill attraction for the 50s at least.
Right. For sure. I do have a quote here that said Claude Coates and Ken Anderson did the entrance murals for the first 3 dark rides, which we've mentioned before. Peter Pan, Snow White, and Mr. Toad. That was their way of bringing the characters and the stories from the films back to people as they waited in line. So these big kind of 18-foot murals, we talked previously about Claude Coates and how he went from doing, these background animations to doing these huge walls that he's painting, these 18-foot high walls. Very big change for him as a background artist. But, he didn't shy away from it. So worked out in the end, I guess.
Yeah, and they look great. Do you have anything more about visuals or murals or painting or anything? Because I do have some auditory things.
Yeah.
So I have this is what you would hear. And remember, this is already in that vocal stylings of Eric Blore, and it's like inviting you into the ride. Here's some of the quotes that you would hear. "Hello, you fellows. Hop up here. We'll go for a jolly ride. I'll show you around the world." He's like, Mr. Toad is like, you know how he is in the film. He's like so excitable, and that's what you're greeted to get super, super stoked to go on Mr. Toad's wild ride.
Sad we don't have that anymore.
Oh my God, yeah. Because
hearing Mr. Toad say, "Come on,"
his voice is so fun and makes that whole entire experience seem so low key in terms of like, I know I'm in for something that's exciting. You know how like when somebody talks to you passionately, it makes you excited, even if you're not really fully into what they're into. But you're like, wow, if this person could be that engaged on this topic, like there has to be something there. So, right. Even if it's for a moment, as a guest experience, that is a great like quasi auditory barker. Do you know what I mean? So like you see the mural, you hear the Toad, and you see Wild Ride, you're like, all right, let's do this thing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is like a barker to draw you in and say like, hey, let's go on this ride. So we're heading up to
Kate is showing pictures of kids in motor cars, and I'm laughing at every one because it's mainly like, one, the photo quality is trash, but it's the 50s. And then 2, it's like, a lot of them are like colorized or early color. So that's like interesting to see this transition from black and white, mainly photos, which we see a lot in the 50s, into some like colorized ones of like the later 50s, early 60s.
Yeah. And it's funny because they're either loading in these pictures or they're like coming out of the attraction and like laughing their heads off.
Yeah, but like think about that, right? Like most people, think about Everest for a second in Walt Disney World. Either you're taking photos of somebody like getting onto the ride, or a lot of people who are too scared to go on the ride or don't want to go through the queue are waiting for when they come down that major drop and they're trying to snap that one shot. So like anytime that you can catch somebody having fun, either going on or getting off, mainly getting off, because you're like, oh, have fun, enjoy. And then you take a photo of the kiddos when they're coming out, because again, this is like another opportunity for kids to drive a car. They're not driving nothing, but sure feels like it. Oh, control panels.
I know. Whee! I think that's where we got to go next. Is we got to hunt to the control panel.
Love it.
They would dispatch these cars every 11 seconds, and I found a really great control panel for you, Kirk. Check this out. It's got the microphone and everything.
Oh my God. Fantastic. Look at that. It looks like a drive-through, like ones that you like.
Excuse me, if you saw they must have turned around.
Right? Like where you like move it and rotate it.
Yeah. Yep. And so this lovely cast member who's clad in a polka dot shirt and green kind of like overalls.
Styling with that Oshkosh, dude.
But the interesting thing is that Bob Gurr said, I often tell the ride operator people down there not to touch the equipment in Mr. Toad ride. They're the only original parts left in Disneyland. Oh. So from what I'm understanding, and we can look into this more as we dig into the 1983 version, but it sounds like this hasn't really changed or been updated that much since 1983, except they moved the track layout, changed a little bit.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, I mean, if you think about the automobiles and like the bus bar, like none of that really needs to adjust. I remember one time I was in, and this is a contemporary story that I think kind of adds to it, is like we think that everything is updated in the parks, right? I think like most guests have the perception that this is an up-to-date park and everything that I'm enjoying and experiencing is cutting edge or will update with the times. And I was exiting into the Imagination Pavilion, just rode Figment, and there was a Windows Millennium wallpaper going off where they have those like radar, or it's I think it's infrared, where like you put your hands in and it'll play like musical instruments, but that's obviously running on an old Windows system that was running Millennium at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, so like when I think about like advancements, a lot of these attractions are running on like Windows 95 or 98 or 2000 because they don't need to operate or change the software necessarily. And a lot of these are grandfathered in. So like even safety protocols, it behooves them to necessarily upgrade as long as everything's functioning, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there at least one place I have seen like Windows XP pop up on something when it like defaulted to it.
It's like I remember growing, listen, I'm 40. So growing up from 84, I saw a lot of like the technological shifts, and it's funny to see things that I grew up using and you're like, man, that's like 20 years old now, or 25 years old, or 30 years old, but it still is operating these attractions just fine. So, you know, if it ain't broke, like Gur said, don't fix it.
That's right. Okay, so at this point, I do have one more loading picture here. I like this one. Look at this guy in his shades over in the operating panel.
Dude, teacher is so fly. Gotta wear shades. She's also got those like sweet, like horn rimmed kind of shades too, or little,
almost like cat eye glasses.
Yeah.
So at this point, we have loaded into our Toad car, our hot rod, if you will, of Toad Hall. And in this picture, you can see the door that we're going to go through around the corner there. And I will say that there's not very many photos that exist of this ride that I have found. There's also very little video out there because of the video lighting being so horrible back in 1955. It would be almost impossible to capture this well on film without some sort of exterior lighting. But they did have that Universal film that we talked about before in Snow White, the 40 Pounds of Trouble, where it does have a very short clip of the interior of the ride that they used an actual light and lit it up. So we'll show that as we go through here. There's just a couple pictures of that as well.
On here, talking about the control panels, there is a quote in this article saying that there was a whoosh of compressed air. So I don't know. What is that compressed air? I haven't been on the attraction that much to know if it's either just like an auditory thing, or if it's a ride functionality thing, or if it's a thematic thing. Is there still a whoosh of compressed air when you're disembarking?
No.
Interesting.
I don't think so. You just hear the hum of it like start to move, but there's definitely no air. Okay, so let's go into scene 1, which is Toad Hall.
J. Thaddeus Toad.
You bang through the doorways of that ancestral home of J. Thaddeus Toad in Toad Hall, and you're going to see the fireplace on the left.
What I love about this is, like, look at the flat of, like, J. Thaddeus's, I don't know if that's him or his ancestors, because they do have the Toad Hall crest in the background with the toads, like, holding up, which almost looks like a Fabergé egg in the middle of their family crest. But then you have these statues that are sitting on pedestals, like stone columns, and they're full, like, supposed to be like sculpts of like Toad, like dressed up in a suit. But it's weird because the dimension is almost like, you know how like when you look at a cylinder, it's like flat two sides and then it's like moved out a bit. Like that's kind of the vibe on it, because it has shape to it, but it doesn't have a 3D. So it's still like a flat, but it has width, if that makes sense. Like, and the width is probably somewhere around a half a foot to a foot. So it does have some depth to it, but it's still a flat.
Yeah.
It's just a fat flat.
Yeah, and it does have on the other side, there's these little suits of armor. There's actually two of them, but this one later becomes Sir Clinks-a-lot, but I don't think he's labeled so.
He's
in
got a
this
name?
version. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so
Oh, yeah.
fun.
The 1983 version, he's got it like right below him. It says Sir Clinks-a-lot,
Oh,
which
that's
is,
so
like makes
cute.
me so happy.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the coat of arms above the mantle is supposed to be Toad's Rampant is like the motto on it, which
Okay.
is so interesting. In the Book of Wind of the Willows, his Toad actually says, "Live for others. That's my motto in life," which is really weird because it's not how he behaves.
Yeah, but don't you hang on, time out. Are we interpreting it the same way? The way I interpret that is if it's like live for others, it's like I have to live as large of a life or a larger than my own personal one life because other folks are they're hindered by whatever it is. It could be things in their life that are.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Interesting. Yeah, maybe you're interpreting it different.
I interpret it slightly different. Like he has so much life to live that he's living more than other people would ever dream. So if you took his experiences, it would be the sum of several people's lives because most people are kind of mundane and similar and don't really go beyond their family and their work.
I guess so. I'll have to look at it in context and get back to you because I feel like I know we're going to run into yet another motto when we do the 1983 version. So I will do my research in context and see how he potentially meant that. So we have the suits of armor. We have some weapons. We have some books also exist in this space. You can see this is from another point of view. There's the other suit of armor. And then I love that the Disneyland paper hats is in this picture. So they used to have these paper sun hats that I absolutely love and talk about way too much. But this lady is wearing one of them in this photo. But then behind her, you also see a painting of Cyril, the horse, is a portrait of him hanging on the wall behind her. And then you see like there's paneling on the wall that's then covered in these paintings, but it's all painted on. Like these are all painted paintings. If that makes sense.
What? Aren't all paintings painted, Kate?
Well, do you remember when we were watching them paint them? Like, okay, so here's the making of that. And how they projected the pictures on the wall and then they painted them on. So
yeah,
they're not like
it's not like stickers.
Right. It's not like a painting that they painted and then hung in a frame on the wall. They like painted the frame and the painting on the wall.
That's what she's trying to say, kids, is that there is no frame. It's just all paint.
I can't.
I got you.
Yeah. Later on, we do see also Mole in his green suit and red vest does show up in this area too. Which this is the best picture I got of him.
Looks pretty good. That was me earlier this morning.
Rat, actually, but this is in any case, it's one of them. It's you earlier this morning. Is how you said. So we see Mole in his green suit and red vest, and McBadger dressed in a Scottish plaid behind a desk, nearly struck by each car. And then we also have this guy who wasn't added until a 1961 remodel, but I'm just going to include it here since we're just moving through. We have a butler who's in the kitchen who's balancing a tray on his hand, and so it looks like you're going to crash into him and cause him to like spill his tea tray. And here's a little better picture of it from Yesterland.
Emphasize the butler. Holy cow, dude.
Yeah, it's kind of like his backside is a target, I guess. Yeah.
I like how in this article it says the teetering tea time crockery that the butler is holding is an inviting target for your bumpers. So it's like they want you to run into his behind.
I guess so.
A lot of people are spelling butler with two T's, and I won't play.
The backside of butler. Well said. Well said.
He be thick.
At this point, then, we crash through the window toward the Hammy Hamlets. We're Worcestershire, Oughtonshire, not so sure, and nowhere in particular. So we basically just crash through the window at this point, and that brings us into scene 2, which is the countryside and Ratty's house. There's a quick period of cold air and darkness, which I'm not entirely sure because we don't have ride footage of this, but you know how we've talked, Kirk, about how there's always like a transition scene for these Fantasyland ones from the outside world, and then we have incandescent lighting, and then we have like black lighting
Right.
for your eyes to like adjust, so it's not like a rough transition from like the sun to like black light. I feel like Toad Hall at this point today, it still is a transition scene of Toad Hall from that outside to inside, and it's incandescently lit. And I wonder if that was also true of this Toad Hall as well.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense considering if we look back to last episode with the concept art, they literally carved out a section, although it wasn't inscribed as Toad Hall. It does say like adjustment. You know what I mean? It was like
Right.
eye adjustment period in the layout. So I would imagine the lighting was there. But again, that's I never wrote it, so it's a guess.
I know. It's neither did I. Or if I did, I don't remember. Obviously not in 1955. So at this point we go to, there's a quick period of the cold air and darkness, and then we swing around and see some stone arches. And we see Ratty's house on the riverbank. Now, you had this last time, you had that concept art. Do you remember you found that kind of rare, we debated whether it was for the like riverbank house?
Right. Hang on, I got it. So there is the riverbank house. So, there's
Perfect.
Hang on, there's water. There we go. There's the water.
Perfect.
For those that are listening, I'm holding up a terribly hand-drawn Post-it note with an awful house that's on terrible water.
You tried to make it 3D, though. I appreciate the effort.
Yeah, come on. Well, we're painting, and we painted the paint house, and it's not really a house, it's a paint. So it's just painted.
Anyway, if you had that concept art last week of the riverbank house, I wonder if that also inspired this this particular flat.
Although we still are not sure as to if my concept art that I found, which was in that auction site, if that was for the storybook canal boats, or if it was made for this attraction and just so happened to end up being utilized for the storybook canal boats, which we know that, you never throw a good idea away. You can always pull this stuff out.
Right. It could have been used for both, for all we know.
Both. That's copyright, dude.
All right. So at this point, we're going to see an English Bobby blowing a whistle.
A little copper, dude.
Yeah. And he's saying stop, holding up his hand in a halt gesture. There's a whole bunch of chaos at this point. The whistles blow, headlights approach, which we saw in that original concept with Bruce Bushman. Remember that the headlight kind of gag of like you see the reflection of your headlights in a mirror, but they're just yours. They're not actually another car. The signs then say wrong way, or go back, or do not enter. And they're telling you got to stop. But at this point, we do start to see this transition into a London street. And there's this great picture here of, I feel like this is how Yale Gracie always stands. He's the one in the suit coat and tie, and usually has a pipe.
Has a
That's
pipe.
this kind of,
Yeah.
So you can see it says turn back, but then he's back there. And that is where you see your cop on a motorcycle. See, he's standing next to that right
Okay.
there.
That makes perfect sense.
I will say that the lampposts you see in these scenes were from those. If you remember in the Bruce Bushman concept, we saw a lamppost that you would hit at that point and it would make a noise. So that all the lampposts you see in these versions all kind of go back to that one from Bruce Bushman. But there is, I also have this one. I want to make sure I show all these. There's a lamppost in this one as well. And you can see it says turn back. But then we do see that headlight gag with the motorcycle I think that was added in 1961 when they refurbished this and added some new scenes. So this is from that movie I was talking about, the 40 Pounds of Trouble. We have a really good, clear picture of him with his leg up, and then he pushes it down as if he's starting his engine. So that's up, and then you can see it. This is what it looks like down as he's starting his engine. Really fun little gag there that he's going to get you. But basically the whole thing is just chaos as you're just winding through the city streets, and it's saying do not enter one way and you're going the wrong way and turn back and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, the only other thing that you hear again, so auditory, is that you're hearing sirens. So the all the cues are pointing towards this isn't great.
No. You're going the wrong way is basically like what it's telling you, but you're Mr. Toad, so you're good. Do you want to talk about where we're going next?
Sure. So the next part is we're turning and we're racing past wooden pilings along a looming bow of a ocean freighter towards a waterfront pier. Like the wooden pilings are on the right-hand side, and then the pier is all the way off in the distance. So again, another one where they use, I love vanishing points, where it gives you the feeling of depth. And in this one, you can see the tower of, or the London Bridge all the way off in the distance, which is cool. But it looks like we're going straight off that. And I mean, if
that's
you look
the Tower Bridge. That's the Tower Bridge.
Yeah, that's
the London Bridge is a different bridge.
Oh, is it? Tower Bridge, London Bridge?
Yeah.
Which one's falling down?
Bridge. The London Bridge is falling down, but the Tower Bridge was next to the tower.
Down,
so this one's
down.
Literally next to the Tower of London, and that's why it's called the Tower Bridge.
Okay.
But yeah. Sorry, people mistake those all the time.
No,
so
I was going to say, I've been to England and I went to the Tower of London to see, I guess, I don't know, like the crown jewels or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Something like that. And I feel like I saw that. So
yeah, it's right next to it.
That's the Tower Bridge. Got it.
Yeah.
But what I love about this is, again, like shows the proximity and depth of that track and how quickly it can turn. So like you might be in like, this is pretty boring. You're just staring at flat walls, but it's dark. You're moving relatively quick for how much distance you're traveling, because it's not big and most of the track is winding. So each thing is like, if you view it as a small segment, it's very easy to notice that the turns and the quickness of it seems pretty exciting.
Well, the interesting part about this particular section is that it has these bumps in the road that make it feel like you're going bump, 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 which still exists today. That scene pretty much hasn't changed since 1983, where you're still feeling like you're going over this pier and it's bumpy, which is, again, this is the Bruce Bushman concept art, where you can see it says bumpy terrain right after a broken bridge. So they pulled that idea of a bridge out, but they just changed it a little bit. So, you are headed towards a bumpy bridge, but the bumpy terrain was after it in that concept. Whereas this, it's like it's bumpy as you're headed towards what looks like a broken bridge, and you're going to fall to your demise into the bay or the river.
What I love about this is it's just such a simple practical effect. It reminds me of Test Track, where they used to use the Belgian blocks and cobblestones when you would like test in that area, where you're literally just on tires going over different textures. And in the case for this one, it's literally, you can see on those pilings the little individual squares, which it's not like a crazy amount of elevation difference in the road, but that like half an inch of a steel block, which again is not messing or interfering with the track. It's just so happened the tires go over it. It's cool also seeing the tire path. It reminds me of looking at like trackless attractions and knowing exactly where the car will go, because it's like ingrained in the floor with the patterns.
Yeah. Well, I love how something that I don't know what this sign says, because it's really hard to say, but I think it's a weasel that's perched on top of it.
Interesting. There is definitely a weasel on top of that, because if you look on the left-hand side, that's its tail. Underneath it are like the hands, and then the front is like a pointed out snout, like going towards the center of the Tower Bridge. But that's definitely a weasel.
I have this other picture from the 70s of that. Look at how it's in color.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't that neat? And then you can see it actually has to the right, there's a boat that's on the water I think it's the Thames. It's not a bay, it's a river, it's the Thames.
Or as my kids would say in high school that I taught, Thames? Were they on the Thames? Thames? It's a TH, dude.
Yeah.
The Thames.
At this point now, we're going to head to the warehouse, which is we swing abruptly into the left into a warehouse and into a long straight corridor on the right. And you see lots of crates and boxes and barrels that all say danger, explosive, acid, TNT, nitro, blasting powder, fragile, those kinds of things.
And they're kind of like tilting and leaning over top of you. So when you look at one of the few pictures that we have, you could see all these things kind of like, they look like they're toppling over. Did the barrels move a little bit?
Yeah. So there was a whole bunch of barrels, which does happen today too. They have barrels that look like they're going to kind of topple over on you. They're like stacked up and then they kind of move. Well, in the week of October 11th, 1955, a stressed cable in Mr. Toad on these barrels actually snapped. And the barrels, who are supposed to look like they were going to fall but not actually fall, actually fell on a woman, which ended up being one of the very first Disney lawsuits. And she actually did win that lawsuit. So that is not good history, but really interesting for the barrels.
What do you think happened to her? Because like, there's nothing like these things look pretty heavy, to be honest.
Yeah, she probably
and it's
got
falling
hurt.
from like a good solid 7 feet elevation above her.
Yeah, I imagine it did not feel good, which is probably she survived, but long enough to see.
She's dead. Fun fact: she probably is dead. It was back in the 50s, so
it could be. Yes, that's actually kind of sad.
It was from the barrels.
It's terrible.
No, you're not supposed to laugh at that, Kate. You sicko.
You started it. Oh, and here's a really great picture of those barrels that I found of them.
The murder barrels.
The murder barrels. I mean, they're tall. They're not short. Maybe 10 feet. They're high up there.
Yeah, they are. She would interesting.
If you see at the end of this, there's a wooden double door that says "This way out." But instead of like going the way that you're supposed to go, we veer to the right instead of the way that says "This way out." And then we run into a nearby solid brick wall, which, if you remember the Bruce Bushman concept that we went over last week, that was also a gag that came from that original concept where you would bust through the masonry. So you can see it here in the front of that tunnel.
Yeah, and then there's like a door at the end just directly to the right of those barrels, and it specifically says "This way out." So we feel like we're going the right way, even though we're smashing through a wall.
Right, exactly. So it's we basically just go the wrong way throughout this entire attraction. Here's a closer up of what Kirk just mentioned.
Yeah, they say as we go through the corner abruptly to the right, straight through a nearby solid brick wall. So it's apparently bricks. You can't see it because it's like a blind corner on this one, but yeah, we go through a brick wall.
Yeah, you can see the turn. That's about all you can see here.
And we bang out through the wall again into the English countryside.
Yeah, and I do have another photo that I actually forgot to pull up earlier that I do want to show just because there's so few photos of this. But this is a great one. If you see, that's actually the cop on the motorcycle behind it. But you can see one of the crash gates that has a stop sign on it, and then the lamppost that's illuminated behind it. And remember, these particular doors, some of them were designed to automatically open, and sometimes they did, and sometimes they didn't. But some of them you actually were designed that the car would actually crash through them, and that was part of the design for the attraction, was that you would hit the doors, and that was what you're supposed to do. Mm-hmm. So at this point, before we go on to the next scene, which will be headed towards the railroad, we got to take a quick little break, time out here and pause and talk about a couple of things that are going on over at Walrus Carp and Disney Cicerone. So, Kirk, what are you doing over there at Walrus Carp these days?
Yeah, so I teased this a while ago, but we've been working on an app for a long time, my partner Dean and I, and we are just now doing signups for Mowd, MOWD.io. And that allows you to gain access to potentially beta testing or a discount for when we finally launch the app. It's going to be utilized for notifications for when rides go down, come back up, wait times. It's across all of the Orlando theme parks. So this is not just the Disney parks. It's also Universal and SeaWorld and the water parks. And then there's also a search for dining functionality. So if you want to find a hot dog, we'll show you exactly where they are and how close they are to you. It's interesting because Dean had us look up an almond croissant, and he felt that was perfectly normal. But Dean's British, so British people like almond croissants.
I was going to say that's not something we have very often.
No, I said look up chocolate croissant like an American, and to which he did. And there's quite a bit. We actually found, which is kind of fun for me, right? Because like I go to the parks all the time, so this app is actually really useful for me. Not only like park hours and wait times and all that good stuff, but we found a chocolate croissant muffin at Primo Piazza, which is at the Riviera, and all of us were like, "Oh, that sounds pretty good." Like I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah,
So
that does sound good.
You never know what you can find by typing it into mode MOWD.io.
And I love the idea that if you have dietary restrictions too, if you're gluten free or if you have allergies and stuff, you can search for different foods that you want.
Yeah, we want this to be a inclusive app that allows people to find what's important to them. Now, we're only as good as what things get listed by the parks. So we always tell people to still use your best guidance and caution and ask accordingly, especially if you have a really, really serious allergy. So, but yeah, it gives you, at least allows you to narrow down a couple of options.
Right, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Very exciting. Congratulations on getting it to the beta test.
Yeah, we're getting
hard on that.
Yeah, it took us basically a year to get to where we're at because, like, I mean, Dean and I are not like full-time developers. It's not like we raised capital and have a team of people working on this thing. So it's just been like this quiet little fun project for about 7 months, and then we started showing it to the world a little bit, and now we're at that point where release is coming soon enough. But if you want to get updates or potentially be a beta tester, go check out that website, MOWD.io. Mode.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. What do you got going on? What do you got? What's cooking, Kate?
My latest book, Who the Mirror Reflects, is now available on Audible. So that is the third book in the Pixie Dust in the Parks series, which takes place in the Disney parks. This one in particular stars some cast members who really love Disney history and is set in Walt Disney World. So that one is available on Audible. Just search for Kate Grasso or Disney Cicerone, pop right up. And I am working on the next book, almost finished with the next book of my nonfiction series, which is A Glimpse of the Magic, Finding Ourselves in the Disney Story. Was the first book in the series. The second one doesn't have a title yet. It's almost there. But that one should be coming out within the next couple of months. So just kind of a teaser for that one. And I'm also working, you guys are the first to hear of kind of a new project that I'm working on that's coming very soon. I know, buckle up. is that I am going to be offering a subscription on Substack for my writing for people who want a little bit more and who, it's a long time sometimes between books, well, not too long, but it can be a while between books. And I want to make sure that, I'm giving you guys some encouragement and Disney history and kind of unique insights in a new way that you guys can enjoy some writing from me. So look for that pretty soon coming here on Substack. That is on its way. Yeah,
it's awesome. I love that. That's like a really great way if you're a writer to reach your audience because like doing a book takes a very long time. It's lots of development. Sometimes it's research. Sometimes it's storyline or arc or character development. So it's not like you can crank books out every week. So
no.
Allowing yourself to have a place to be able to share other writings or insights or particularly something that's interesting to you that week is a pretty cool little way to connect with your audience.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited about it. And it'll be a combination of nonfiction, inspirational things and history. And also there'll be some installments from this series that I've worked on and future series that will kind of pop up too as we go on. So you'll see some of these of your favorite characters from this series kind of come back and make some cameos in this subscription series. So very excited for that.
Very fun.
All right. That being said, thanks for coming along with us on our wild ride of a tangent there. Just kind of chatting about what we're up to. But let's head back into the attraction. At this point, we're going to head towards some railroad tracks. So you want to talk about what's coming up here, Kirk?
Sure. So we actually see just before the railroad tracks, it looks like some stormy skies and some stunted scary trees. There is a picture of the scary trees, and I feel like you should talk about them for a hot second, only because you're like Queen Scary Tree.
I love the scary trees.
There she goes. Let her go. Take it. Go off, Queen.
Okay, so if you remember, Clyde Coates, of course, was doing a lot of the painting of this attraction. And we talked about Claude, especially in the Snow White series for Walt Disney World's version, when he made all those like distorted trees, right? So you think of any kind of plant or tree that looks like kind of like it's weird or out of like, like very strange, pulled in one direction or just distorted in a weird way, that's Claude Coates. So that's like his signature tree is the distorted tree. So he has a lot of spooky trees that show up in many different attractions. We talked about it in the Snow White series. We have the whole running through the forest scene of Snow White where these trees with creepy eyes. It shows up again in the Haunted Mansion. We have, as you descend from the attic, you see all of the trees there. And they have some of those have eyes, but they definitely have reaching limbs as well. And so again, it's all Claude Coates being involved in all of these things. But that's what we see here in Mr. Toad as well. It's not quite reaching for you, but they're definitely ominous in the way that they're painted. They don't have any leaves.
Even there's one that's right by that railroad tunnel number 13, and that kind of has a little limb that's reaching towards at least the opening, which I mean, you're going that way. So
look at this one.
Yeah, I mean, hello.
So this one actually has a pair of eyes that are looking out at you from like a black hole. So it's pretty much exactly like Snow White in that way.
It's great.
I was so excited when I saw this picture because it's so rare.
Mm-hmm.
But there was not just like an illusion of sinister trees, actual eyes looking out from a tree, which is pretty exciting. Okay, so at this point, we've got the scary trees. We have the tree with the spooky eyes. We go by this two-dimensional roadway that is going up into perhaps somewhere safer where you should be going. It looks like at this point you can see beyond these people. There's this roadway that goes up and around the corner where you should be going, but you don't end up going there. And instead you head towards this arching stonework with the railroad tunnel number 13, which of course is bad luck, right? It's always bad luck when you see the number 13. It's labeled above it. It says railroad tunnel number 13. You're warned by loud sirens and whistles and bobbies with billy clubs to perhaps turn around. But interestingly enough, there's this guy that is sitting here that we have to pause and talk about a little bit.
There's two different pictures that I'm looking at. There's one that has a bobby with a billy club in his hands and a whistle in his mouth. And then there's the one that you have, which has the engineer and like the railroad crossing safety gate. So here's the actual bobby with a billy club.
Oh.
So it's the same exact scene. It's identical. And in fact, you can tell it's identical because that danger sequence and that rock it's the same exact thing. So I think yours is more ornate and came later, because I was trying to figure out like what came first, the bobby or the engineer. But it makes more sense for yours to come secondary because all of that is three-dimensional, where this was still a flat. So I assume this was before that. And this is also black and white and yours is in color. So just based on, for all those reasons.
Interesting. I think you're probably right. I think yours probably came first. Perhaps this one was added in 1961 refurb.
Yeah. I think this one is the original 55
because they did add more characters and whatnot during that refurb. Interesting.
Yeah, because you can see it's the exact same scene. You can even see the light through the tunnel as well. But when you scroll over just a hair, you can actually see that bobby, which is cool.
Yeah, because he's the signalman here, which is a great transition to let's talk about this guy, because he's not an engineer. He's a signalman. And what is a signalman? Well, it's time for us to go down.
I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for a single man. You know what I'm saying? Wait, what are we talking about?
So this is like a sleepy railroad signalman who's this guy who's holding this lantern. And but he's not really doing a great job of like warning you not to go into the tunnel, which I think is part of the fun of his particular character.
He's too busy waxing his curled mustache.
He's not signaling you to stop. So there's I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole about signal lamps. So buckle up because we're going to do that next. So metal and glass railway signaling lamps were used for communication, safety, and lighting by train guards, shunters, and signalmen in the late 1880s to the early 1900s. They were usually used with kerosene as well. So I have a great picture of what this is one of these signalmen from the 1800s swinging this lantern back and forth. So there's a difference between a lamp and a lantern. So lanterns were designed to be portable, i.e. carried, and were basically globes surrounded by a metal frame with a fuel source. So these would be lanterns. And then lamps, on the other hand, had a sheet metal or cast metal body and uses lens to amplify the internal light source behind it. So this would be like a lamp, okay?
What's interesting is they both, I mean, that's not a handle. That's just to be hanging. And remember, like, most of these, this is the pre-advent of batteries. Most of them were lit up in one way or another. Maybe this era is not. I just keep on thinking, like, the way that you're saying this, Kate, is so funny to me because you're like, it's super helpful. And when you look at them, you can see the difference. But when you say to somebody, there's a difference between a lantern and a lamp, my head just goes like me grabbing like a giant lamp and walking around with it versus like a lantern, like, duh,
Right.
But they look so similar. But when you look at the pictures, they look very similar and you go, oh, well, I could see somebody holding one of those lamps because it looks like it has a handle, but it's not really a handle. It's a mounting ring.
Right. I think this is like the best picture of it because you can see the ones that are smaller and surrounded by like wire. Those are lanterns. And then the one that has like different colors. This is like with like a signal. This is a lamp. So lamp, lantern, lamp, lantern. Okay. So there's a code then that these guys would use, these signalmen would use to signal the train, right? That was their job. I have a whole code that I thought I would bring up here to show you what you do. So if you stop, Kirk, you got to get something to hold because you're gonna be our little guinea pig here.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Okay. I've got an actual lantern.
Oh, see, you have like nice. You have like
a lantern.
This is my lantern. This is my lamp. Leave my lantern lamp alone.
So to stop, we're going to swing back and forth across tracks. So like this. This is stop. Okay. Now proceed is raised vertically up and down. So like go, proceed. Okay. Back is lantern swung vertically in a circle at half arm's length across the track. Reduced speed is lantern is held out to the side at arm's length. I don't know if I can do here. Just I can't hold it out to the side. Apply brakes. Lantern is swung horizontally above your head. So apply brakes. It's kind of like slow down, right? Release brakes. Lantern is held at arm's length above the head. So you just hold it there. And then train has parted or come loose. I don't know if you can do this one. So this is like something has gone drastically wrong. Your train has broken apart. You're actually going to swing it in a full circle all the way around. The train has come off the tracks. Everything is wrong. But it's like, it like actually shows it like upside down.
Oh my God.
Like, yeah. So.
We're okay.
So that is some basic train signals for you to learn. They had a whole bunch of different ones too. That those were kind of more the official ones. They had lots of unofficial ones that they did. But it says a trainman's lamp was not only necessary in his work, but many times became a weapon of defense or offense as the occasion required. A railroad lantern with its heavy wire frame and globe was a wicked club when swung at arm's length and was with intent to damage. So just in case you need,
they'd be hidden people.
I'm going to stop carrying, mace. I'm going to start carrying one of these when I go out and about.
Okay, I don't know what holding a 90s rapper in your purse is going to do for you, but...
So I just thought that was just a little fun to kind of go down that he's a signalman. So he's not just an engineer, though he does look at in this Mr. Toad's Wild Ride because he is dressed like an engineer with his little handkerchief, which is red.
I like how he's sleepy and doing nothing.
He's like, yeah, I know it says danger and tunnel 13 and whatnot. He's like, I'm on break.
Right. Because obviously, if he was signaling people like a man should, you would be over there telling them to stop.
Right.
It'd be right across his face.
At this point, we see red lights and signs that say to stop, but we do go into the tunnel in any way. And there is also a a striped railroad gate that swings away at the last minute as well, which I think is this one, this black and white striped gate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what comes next, Kirk?
Well, in the blink of an eye, we're swallowed by the tunnel. I'm reading the article. This ridiculous thing. I like how they phrased it. So now our other senses tell us we're in trouble. First, we feel the rapid bumping of our wheels shudder over what must be wooden ties of a railroad track. So they're using that same exact setup with like the interlaid on the track. So we're like bumping like this, going up and down and up and down. And our ears detect the roar of an oncoming locomotive, its steam exhaust loud and rhythmic. Then our eyes are blinded by the brilliant headlight of the engine right above us as we approach our final seconds. And like, you might be thinking, approach our final seconds. Like, what do you mean? We're about to die.
This is the end.
This is the end of the world as we know it. And I feel fine. Then we shrink back into the padded vinyl of our motorcar seat cushions as we are exploded in the final bright light flashes of the explosion. So we literally erupt as we get hit head on by a train.
Yeah, and I have a quote from Bill Martin. He says, "I remember the meeting when we thought of the train coming at you idea. That was a catch-on gag, the last effect at the end of the ride that sends you to HE double hockey sticks. That idea of going through the devil's mouth, through the jaws of HE double hockey sticks was okay with Walt at the time too. So that's where we're headed next. Instead of the pearly gates and the angels singing like in the Bruce Bushman concept, we are headed to a very hot place."
Yeah. What's interesting about this too is comparison to what we have now for Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. This is a lot more demonic and more like spook house vibe than anything else. So this is like legitimately scary and almost telling you a warning, especially for your younger riders, that there are repercussions and negative ones if you make some bad decisions in life.
Mm-hmm. If you play, you pay. So we.
I gotta read this. You gotta let me read this. As light returns, wait. What?
Before you do, I want to mention what Kirk is reading from this is from E-Ticket magazine article from a long time ago. So in case you're wondering where that article,
this was from an edition in 2015. They did a really nice job. This is like one of the few spots too where you can actually find photos, which is what's really cool is you can find this on the Walt Disney .org blog right now. So this article is completely free for everybody. So it's a cool way to still relive this yourself. But all right, as light returns, we're swallowed once again, this time by a grimacing, sharp-fanged devil's mouth, the jaws of hell. A warm welcome is spelled out in billowing fabric flames as we prepare ourselves for the punishment we deserve as our car turns to the left. Disneyland's version of Hades is a pleasant cave-like corridor lined with rocky flats and stalagmites, each topped with their own amusing red devil, which obviously change over time.
Yeah, I did find kind of the possible inspiration for these jaws of hell that you see here.
Swear jar.
Sorry.
I owe a quarter anyway, too, so.
I know, because it's like you have to
That's
say
what they said
point.
it. Yeah, that's what they called it.
That's how it says. So this is possibly inspired by the Victorian-era Cabaret de l'Enfer, which is the Hell Cabaret in Paris. Check out this, Kirk. This is what this looked like in Paris.
Holy cow. Dude, this is crazy to me. Are you serious? How's
Yeah.
that a thing?
This is in Paris, kind of near Moulin Rouge. It was one of a very famous night spot in Paris that people would go to. And I actually have some pictures of some other parts of it, which is really interesting. This is what it looked like on the inside. Super creepy. Check this out. There's all these different like sculptures, but it kind of looks like a cave as well. So I feel like this is likely a very direct inspiration for this particular part of this attraction, because you see all these sculptured figures that look like they could be devils and whatnot, just kind of all over the walls, which is so super creepy. Quite honestly, it's very weird. But yeah, it's known as the Hell Cabaret.
So
in Paris.
I can't find. I had one example in my head, but it didn't really mirror exactly what this looks like. But my gosh, I grew up with something similar. It was called Dante's Inferno. It was on the Wildwood Boardwalk, and look at the same like devil face on the bottom. Although this demonic bad boy is upside down for some reason.
Oh yeah,
Is that
that's
crazy?
something. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is what I used to go on as a kid. This would be the ride on family vacations.
That explains a lot. Explains a lot.
That's my point. I'm messed up, kids.
But anyway, I'm pretty sure that this was a direct influence and inspiration for this particular entrance. Because, I mean, like, the face is almost identical in a lot of ways. It's very, very similar. So people have asked me, why do they go to this hot place instead of heaven? Okay, especially if we remember back in this Bruce Bushman concept, we'd see he goes to the pearly gates and he sees angels singing and all of these things, and he ended up in a good place. And he didn't end up in a hot place in the book or the movie. Like, where in the world did this come from? I think this is one of the biggest things that I'm asked is, why do we end up in Ichi double hockey sticks at the end? And the reason is, well, it was funny. It would make people laugh because they weren't expecting it. They weren't expecting that. I mean, and it does make sense that, like, if you're stealing cars and driving, crashing into stuff and running over people, like, you're not going to end up in a good place, right? So it really was truly to just make people laugh. And this is something we see in other attractions in this time period as well. If you think about Claude Coates, who was also involved in Alice in Wonderland, after you crash through all the doors at what was kind of the end of that attraction and the upper part of the vine at that time, you hear the Goofy yodel, and he goes, "Oh, right?" Like that, you hear that, and you still hear it today. But his son had asked him, I think his son's name is Alan. He asked him, like, well, why did you put that in there? Like, the Goofy has nothing to do with this attraction. He's like, well, I just wanted people to leave, like, with a smile and be like, it was silly. It was fun. And so I think that is why, from everything that I've researched, they just wanted it. They just thought it was the funniest option.
Yeah, I mean, later on, the judge is actually probably the scariest part, which is kind of interesting that he becomes the scariest section of there. I don't think the dragon's really that scary, and certainly not the little devil guys. They're like cute. They're like fun little
I love the
cherubim devil. And plus, like, I know this sounds crazy. I like the heating element that they have in it currently, because like I like going in there and feeling like again, the ways that you can touch a guest without actually physically touching them, things that are auditory, things that are wind related, things that are water effect or smoke effect related, lighting, and then of course sense and heating elements. So yeah, I think that's stuff. Like, this is a tiny little dark ride. It has like a fun little immersion effect. Well, now, but I don't think there was one originally, like a heating element.
I don't have anything that says that they made it warm in there originally. So I don't know if they made it hot in there, but I do know that they did have the little devils, which are also known as cow devils because they have little horns and whatnot. They're little pear-shaped red devils that were originally flat wooden cutouts, like this guy. This is one that like sold on eBay or auction site later. In 1961 is when they became rubberized, and the little wiggling demons that more like the ones we see today, which was sculpted by Blaine Gibson, who sculpted all kinds of things for Disney, all the pirates and all the things. Like he did a lot of sculpting. So they were designed by Blaine Gibson based off of these original ones. Don't know if this is a flat or a rubberized one. It's really hard to tell from the picture, but you do see in this part as well, there are flames that are happening. They had billowing fabric flames, which was an effect they also kind of used in Pirates of the Caribbean later on, but in a different way. But it says welcome, and it's got the flames underneath it. So, but there is a little wiggling devil that's above him that you can't see his head, but you can see his curly tail, and he's holding, I don't know, a pitchfork. Pitchfork. Oh yes, yeah. A pitchfork. Yes.
What did you say? A skewer?
A spear, not a skewer.
How would you say skewer?
Skewer.
If you were going to take a tour of a skewer factory, what would you say?
I'm going to go on a tour of the skewer factory.
Thank you for enlightening me.
You're welcome. Hi, Kirk likes the way I say tour.
Wait, what if there was a sewer in a skewer tour? Well, how would you say that?
We're done. We're moving on.
Everybody wants to see in my chat. Everybody's asking you to do it.
No, they're not.
Dang it!
Only you want to hear that. I do have some audio of what it sounded like in the hot place from 1955.
That's so fun. They are really relishing on our misfortune.
Yeah.
That's super creepy and scary. Did this freak
Isn't it
kid
weird?
out? It had to have. Like, maybe that's why that girl came out like that. And she's like staring on.
Probably.
Could you imagine how you would feel after going after that?
Yeah, it does kind of sound like the hyena laugh from It's a Small World, but with
Yeah.
flames like crackling.
Yeah. It's a little
Yeah, it's
texture,
creepy.
too. It's a little fat. It's very creepy. That is horrible. I agree. Plus, like, yeah, like all the crackling noise.
Yeah. I don't think it sounds like that now. I think that they got rid of
They're
that.
way scarier.
Super
Like
scary.
now, it's not like that at all. It's like fun. It's all fun and games. I hate that. Yeah, that's so funny.
So that's what you would hear as you went through it, which is super creepy. And then at that point, remember that this particular section they had to add on as an annex because when they went to move the tracks into this into the park from where they had set it up at the studios, it didn't fit. So they added onto an annex onto the building, and then they put ET double hockey sticks inside of that. But beyond that, we're now leaving the attraction, which I do have some video of people, what they look like as they were heading out of the hot place. And you can
That's so
see those
fun.
golden double doors there.
Yeah, look at them bouncing around, the little devils jumping up and down.
Yeah.
They've
they're
got like
really-
it's like more. It almost looks like they're on a spring. You know, they're not, but
Mhm.
like the animation is so low tech in a good way.
I love how everybody just kind of like, they're either like laughing or look terrified. And there's no like in between, you know?
I wonder if like I'm looking at it, it's not really that rhythmic, the movement. I wonder if they did something simple, like you know how they had fans on the bats for. Do you know what I mean? Like it almost looks like the way that it's shifting. I don't even know if it's motorized.
Yeah, no, it does seem like it's just kind of a simple up and down
Yeah, it's
wiggle
just like
around
it's just
motion.
like undulating.
It's so frustrating that like we have so little video of this because I would love to go and actually ride through it. But that's pretty much all we have. I mean, here I love this picture. This is a classic one that people usually show with these women with these fabulous hats, probably from Adventureland. That you can see Mr. Toad in his motor car headed into the hot place, flying on the mural behind them.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah. And this one, this is an even better picture of it that has those little cow devils on it, which you can see in the bottom. I think this is from the 70s.
I still don't get how these are cow devils.
Oh yeah, they look like little cows. Look,
Dude, this
here,
is
get closer. Come on in, see the cow devils.
okay.
They have little horns. So that being said, they did have that 1961 refurb, which is when they added the rubber cow devils. They had the addition of characters McBadger, Molly, a policeman, and the butler. And they also added new crash doors at that point. But really, there wasn't any other major changes beyond those to this attraction from 1955 all the way until it closed in the 1980s for a massive refurbishment, which is where we're going to head next time for Distory. Yeah.
My gosh, we can't even get to today.
But I think this was a really fun journey to kind of recreate this attraction as much as we're able to.
What I'll tell you is, apart from that e-ticket magazine, there is almost next to nothing about 1955. So this is probably like one of the most complete ride-throughs, scene by scene, that you can find on the internet now.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Really...
I know you didn't ask for it, but you got it.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really fun journey. Do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up, Kirk?
All the single ladies need to find a signal man.
Does he hold a lamp or a lantern? That's the question.
Only lanterns, good for personal defense.
We're barely on our way out of here, and we're headed into 1980s refurb of this attraction, where it pretty much completely changes except for a few small parts, because they have to tear down the entire thing. So that's where we're going next time for Distory. But until then, we hope you had a fun time headed to nowhere in particular. Worcestershire, all places with us. We really appreciate you guys being with us for Distory, and we will see you next time for more of Mr. Toad.
Good day, governor.